Hello, everyone. This is part one of a chapter 4 lecture, The Market Forces of Supply and Demand. In chapter 1, we discussed the 10 principles of economics. One of them is markets are usually a good way to organize economic activities. What that means is, in free market system, most goods and services are produced by privately owned business companies and consumed by many individual consumers. Both sellers and buyers are motivated by their self-interest, and eventually their self-interests are guided by invisible hands. We know invisible hands is simply a metaphor for the market forces. So let me elaborate a little on this. Let me first talk about buyers. If buyers increase the consumption of a good, a product, so what's going to happen? If they continue to increase the consumption of the product, at some point, they will end up buying too much of the product relative to the total amount available. When that happens, the market price of the product will rise. And once market price of the product is rising, then some consumers will find it too expensive and they will drop out of the market. So when people buy more of a product, they can do so because they are motivated by their self-interest. But eventually, some people may not be able to consume that product once the price is rising. So their self-interest is guided by the market forces. Now, let me talk about the supply side or seller's side. Let's say sellers find the production of a product highly profitable. So every seller wants to produce more of the good. So all sellers are motivated by their self-interest. But at some point, if they end up producing too much of the product, more than consumers need, then there will be a lot of unsold units. And eventually, that will drive the market price down. And as a result of too much production of the product, market price goes down, then some sellers will find no longer the product profitable because the price is falling. So eventually, some sellers will drop out of the market, meaning some sellers will stop producing their product because the price is so low, the production of such product is no longer profitable. So sellers can produce more of a product motivated by their self-interest, but eventually some sellers will drop out of the market and their decisions will be guided by market forces. So in this chapter, we are going to talk about the two market forces, demand and supply. Demand means buyer's side of the market, and the supply means the seller's side of the market. So in this session, we're going to focus on the buyer's side of the market, demand. But before we get to details of the buyer's side of the market, we're going to briefly talk about market in general. So let's go to the lecture note. So what is a market? When we define a market, it doesn't have to be a physical marketplace. So a market, the concept of a market could be a little abstract. So simply, whenever we use the term market, actually, we are referring to a group of buyers and sellers of a particular good or service. So you can define as many markets as you want. Market for watermelons, a market for pumpkins, market for computers, market for housing. So market is what? Simply a group of buyers and sellers of a particular good or service. Now, please remember this. For a market to exist, there should be at least one buyer and one seller. Without a buyer or seller, market simply does not exist. Then what is a perfectly competitive market? So we're going to first define a perfectly competitive market and use this later as a benchmark. When a market is said to be perfectly competitive, the market must satisfy the following three conditions. The first is there are so many buyers and so many sellers that each individual has negligible impact on the market price. So that means for a market to be perfectly competitive, first, that there should be, in that market, there should be a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers. So no single individual buyer or seller can have any impact on the market outcome. Think of a market for pumpkins. There are so many buyers and so many sellers. Let's say Sarah decided to buy a few extra pumpkins. Simply because Sarah buys a few more pumpkins, do you think the market price of a pumpkin will rise simply because Sarah buys a few more pumpkins? So in a perfectly competitive market, the number of buyers is just so large that any single individual's behavior will not have any impact on the market outcome. Or let's say John, a pumpkin producer. For some reason, John decided to sell a fewer number of pumpkins. Simply because John sells fewer pumpkins than before, do you think the market price of a pumpkin will rise? No, it'll hardly have any impact on the market price of the pumpkin. So the first condition is there are so many buyers and so many sellers, so no single individual market participant can have any impact on the market outcome. Second, people buy and sell an identical or homogeneous good or service. It doesn't necessarily mean any two units of a good must be like what twin product, must have exactly the same physical shape or attributes. What it means is, as long as the people think they are almost identical, equally replaceable, or homogeneous, then what? We say they are identical or homogeneous goods or services. So that's the second condition that needs to be met for a market to be perfectly competitive. For example, John is what? A pumpkin producer. And Tom is also the pumpkin producer. So John's pumpkin and the Tom's pumpkins, they are just identical. because we don't see any significant difference. So that's why we find the perfectly competitive market usually in the market for agricultural produce or products. So the difference is in the minds of the buyers and sellers. So as long as buyers and sellers believe certain product or service is identical, homogeneous, then that should be enough. The last condition that needs to be met for the market to be perfectly competitive is buyers and sellers can freely enter or exit. So that means, again, if anybody who wants to buy pumpkins or watermelons, they can freely enter the market and buy pumpkins or watermelons. And if they happen to be producers, they can also freely join the market, and they can produce pumpkins and watermelons. Okay. So once again, when a market satisfies the following three conditions, so many buyers and so many sellers. So how many is many? No single individual buyer or seller can have any impact on the market outcome. Second, goods and services sold, traded in a perfectly competitive market are homogeneous or almost identical. Number three, in a perfectly competitive market, buyers and sellers can freely join or leave the market. Okay. And then what is a price taker? Price taker means participants in a competitive market, in a perfectly competitive market. That means buyers or sellers all together. Buyers and sellers in a perfectly competitive market are called a price taker. So what it means is, now go back to the first condition that needs to be met for the market to be perfectly competitive. We said there are so many buyers and so many sellers. So many buyers and so many sellers. So no single individual can have any impact on the market outcome. So they simply have no control over the market price or no influence on the market price. So when you join the market, then what? Hey, what's the going price? And then you only decide whether to accept the price or not. If you accept the price, you buy something. If you do not accept the price, then you don't buy any. And the sellers, they join the market. Hey, what's the going price of a pumpkin or watermelon? Then if you find that price acceptable, then you join the market and start selling your pumpkins or watermelons. And if you do not accept the price, then what? You are not joining the market. So we call the sellers and buyers in a perfectly competitive market a price taker. Okay. Now, this is very important. So I'm going to elaborate a little more on this. So when there are so many sellers, will any seller be able to ask for a higher price? If any seller is asking for a higher price than the going price, then what? He or she won't be able to sell any unit. Why? Because there are many other sellers who are selling the product at the going market price. So all buyers will buy what they need from what? The other sellers. Also, any sellers in a perfectly competitive market will not have any incentive to offer price discount. Why? Suppose John is a pumpkin producer. Well, John may decide to offer a price discount, but there are so many buyers who are willing to buy pumpkins at the going market price. Why would you offer any price discount? After all, total number of pumpkins John can sell is very, very, very small relative to total volume of total number of pumpkins traded in the marketplace. So if John somehow thinks, oh, I can corner this pumpkin market by offering a little bit discount, he's wrong. He can always find enough buyers who are willing to accept the going market price. So no reason to offer any price discount. So any seller in a perfectly competitive market will be what? A price taker. And now, that is true for buyers. Can any buyer demand a price discount? Ask for a lower price? No. Sellers won't accept it. Why? Because the sellers can find many other buyers who are willing to pay the going market price. So they will say, I'm sorry, I have another customer who is willing to pay the going market price. That's it. So that's why both buyers and sellers in a perfectly competitive market are price taker. Now, on the other hand, in monopoly, where there is only one and only one seller, the monopolist has a significant market power. So the monopolist can offer take it or leave it kind of offer, because there are no other competing sellers. The only seller, monopolist, can set the price of its own product. So we call the monopolist with a significant market power. We call the monopolist a price setter. Okay, now let me summarize before we get to the details of demand. For a market to be perfectly competitive, three conditions need to be met. First, many buyers and many sellers, so no single individual can have any impact on the market outcome. Second, products, goods, or services traded in a perfectly competitive market are identical or homogeneous. Third, in a perfectly competitive market, buyers and sellers can freely join the market or leave the market. And we call buyers and sellers in a perfectly competitive market a price taker. And we call a monopolist who has a significant market power or the only seller in a market a price setter. So now we're gonna start to discuss the buyer's side of the market. So first, demand. So what is the quantity demanded of a good? So here we're gonna first discuss a few economic terms related to demand for a good or service. So to have a better understanding, to enhance our discussion of demand or buyer's side of the market, so we're gonna first try to acquaint ourselves with a few economics terms related to demand. So first, what is the quantity demanded of a good? The quantity demanded of a good is the amount of a good that buyers are willing and able to buy at the specific price. Okay, so let's say if I ask you a question, suppose Starbucks coffee price is now $5. Then how many Starbucks coffees are you going to buy or consume? Let's say Starbucks coffee is now $6. Then at that particular price, $6, how many Starbucks coffees are you going to consume in a day or in a week? So at the specific price, how much or how many units of a good are you buying? That is what quantity demanded of a good. Now, here we have a couple of very important keywords here. That is, the quantity demanded of a good, the amount of is the amount of a good that buyers are willing and able to buy at a specific price. So here, two keywords, willing and able. That means, first, you buy something that you are interested in. So willing, okay? And then able to buy at the specific price. So your preference, your interest, your willingness must be backed by your ability to pay for it. So your willingness must be accompanied by enough financial means. So quantity demanded of a good is not just your wish list. It is the quantity, the amount of a good, not only you are willing to buy, but also you are able to pay for it. So willingness and ability to pay. Now these are what all together. And so quantity demanded of a good in a marketplace is what? It's not just the people's wish list. It is what? Effective, what? Purchase. They are willing to buy them and also they can buy them. Okay. So what is the law of demand? Well, if you examine any market, then you will find that make this observation. People tend to buy more of a good when its price is low, and the people buy less of the good when its price is high. That's why we see a lot of people flocking to a store when there is what extra 40% discount. So when price goes down, people tend to buy more of a good, and as the price rises, people tend to buy less of the good. Such inverse or negative relationship between the product price and the quantity of the good people buy. That is simply what we call the law of demand. Okay, so let me write this down here. So simply the law of demand means an inverse or negative relationship between the price of a good and the quantity demanded of the good. Okay. So we already know the quantity demanded of a good. That is the amount of a good that people are willing and able to buy. And then look at its relationship with the price. So when price rises, people tend to buy less of the good. As the price falls, people tend to buy more of the good. That's what we typically observe in the marketplace. And that observation is called the law of demand. So what is the demand schedule? Well, we don't really often use demand schedule, but we're going to briefly talk about this. A table that shows the relationship between prices of a good and the corresponding quantities demanded of the good. So look at this table. So here we have two columns. The first column shows price of lattes, and the second column shows you number of lattes demanded. So simply, the first column is, we can record it like what? So let's say this is a price. And the second column is simply quantity demanded. So now look at the relationship. As the price increases from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3, then the number of lattes people buy, quantity demanded, is what? Decreasing from 16 to 14 to 12. So do you see here an inverse or negative relationship between change in price and change in quantity demanded? It is obvious. As the price increases, the number of lattes consumed is what? Decreasing. So when we show such a negative or inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded in this way, in a table with the two columns, one is what? Price, the other is a quantity demanded, we call this demand schedule. Now, in this demand schedule, how many different prices do you see? Well, there are 6 different prices. First, free, then $1, $2, and all the way up to $6. Then how many different quantities demanded do you see? Now try to recall the definition of a quantity demanded. Quantity demanded is the amount of a good or service that people are willing and able to buy at a particular price. Since there are 7 different prices, then what? We see here 7 different quantities demanded. When price is 0, quantity demanded is 16. When price is 5, quantity demanded is 6. Okay. Now, what is a demand curve? Simply, demand curve is a graph that depicts the relationship between the price of a good and the quantity demanded of the good. So simply speaking, we are representing the information in this table, demand schedule, in a slightly different way. So we're gonna record price of lattes along the vertical axis, and the second column, quantity of lattes demanded, we're gonna represent the quantity along the horizontal axis. And then we're gonna add a third line that is showing the relationship between price and quantity demanded. Now here, we combined demand schedule and demand curve together here. So here, as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different prices. And for each price, now what? We have corresponding quantity demanded, 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4. As the price rises from 0 to 6, the quantity demanded drops from 16 to 4. So we copied what? The prices along the vertical axis, and we copied quantity demanded what? Along the horizontal axis. So quantity demanded of lattes here. Then we what? Plotted each pair. When price is 0, quantity demanded is 16. So when price is 0, quantity demanded is 16. So we have a coordinate here. When price is 2, its corresponding quantity demanded is 12. So we have another pair here. We're gonna plot this. When price is 2, quantity demanded is 12. So when price is 2, quantity demanded is 12. So we can plot this particular pair or coordinate. So when you do so, for each pair, and you connect all those pairs or coordinates, then what? The line that connects all these uh, 7 pairs is what? Negatively sloped or downward sloping. So this is negatively sloped or downward sloping. So what does it mean? So that means what? Simply it is an inverse or negative relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. So the law of demand or negatively sloped demand curve or an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded, they are all exactly meaning the same thing. Okay. So then what is a market demand? Well, in each market, there are numerous buyers. So you can think of what? An individual demand for a good or market demand for a good. So simply market demand is what? The sum of all individual demands for the good or service. So we're going to here briefly talk about this. So here, let's say, uh, think of the what ice cream cone, market for ice cream cones, and there are only, let's say, well, this is not realistic at all, but just it'll help you understand the concept of market demand. Let's say there are only 2 buyers, Catherine and Nicholas. So now Catherine's individual demand for ice cream cone is what? Now here, as the price rises from 0 to $3, then Catherine is what? As the price is rising, Catherine reduces her quantity demanded of ice cream cones. And here, Nicholas has his own demand for ice cream cones. So you can tell pretty much what? Who likes ice cream cones better? Obviously, Catherine, because at each price here, the quantity demanded of ice cream cones is greater for Catherine. Okay, so then what is a market demand? Simply market demand is the sum of all individual demands. So here, when market price is 0, Catherine wants to consume 12 ice cream cones. Nicholas wants to consume 7. So what? At the price of 0, total quantity demanded, the sum total of all individual quantity demanded is what? 12 plus 7 is 9. And then what? If price is 2, Catherine wants 4, Nicholas wants 3. So the sum total of quantities demanded in the marketplace will be 7. So the first graph shows Catherine's demand. So you just plot what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, and then corresponding quantities demanded. So what? You just plot 7 pairs here. So you will have what? Catherine's demand like this. You can also draw or plot Nicholas' demand, and then using what? Price here and sum total of all individual quantities demanded here, you can plot the market demand like this. Okay, but we're not going to use this uh, the, uh, the, uh, the, the details of the market demand very often. Next, so what are the shifts in the demand curve? So before we discuss this, let me back up a little bit here. Let me go back here and look at this demand curve. So what do we see here? As a price is rising from 1 to 6, then the quantity demanded is decreasing. What it means is when price is 1, the total quantity demanded is 14, or the number of lattes purchased will be 14. Okay, so here price is 1 and the quantity demanded is 14. But here, when price is rising to $5, then given $5 price, then what? Quantity demanded is only 6. Okay, so obviously, as the price rises, quantity demanded or the number of lattes purchased will be smaller. Okay, so what happens? Suppose we were initially here, let's say point A. As the latte price rises, then what? So first the price rises to 2, then what? You reduce the purchase of latte a little bit. So we move from point A to point B. If the price again increases to 3, then what? You further decrease the what? The purchase for latte. So like from now, so 14, 12, and 10. So you move to point to C and D. And then finally, if the price is rising up to $5, then what? You reach the point E, where you pay $5 for each latte and you consume 6 lattes. So what it means is what? As the price rises, the quantity demanded is decreasing. That means actually what? Along this given demand curve, as the price rises, actually what? We move from what? Point A to point B, and then from point B to point C, and then from point C to point D, and then from point D to point E. So here, we said the law of demand is an inverse relationship between the price and quantity demanded. And what that means is what? As the price rises, the quantity demanded falls. And that means also what? As we just saw a minute ago, you move from, actually you move, in this case, you move upward from one point to another along the demand curve. Can you see it? So here, as the price rises, then what? You buy less and less lattes. So that is exactly what we call the law of demand. So as the price rises, quantity demanded of lattes decreases. Now, graphically, what does that mean? That means what? Along the given demand curve, as the price continues to rise, then what? You move from one point to another along the given demand curve. That is what the law of demand is all about. But now, the topic here is what? It's not movement along the demand curve. Now it says, what are the shifts in the demand curve? So what do we mean by shift here? Any change that raises the quantity, any change that increase the quantity of demanded or quantity that buyers wish to purchase at any given price shifts the demand curve to the right. Likewise, any change that lowers the quantity that buyers wish to purchase at any given price shifts the demand curve to the left. So what does that really mean? Well, if we use a graph, actually what? We can have a much better, clearer understanding of what shifts in demand. It says any change that increase or that causes buyers to buy more at any given price, then demand curve shifts to the right. If there is a change, that causes buyers to buy less than before at any given price, then what? There will be a shift in the demand curve, shift of the demand curve to the left. So we're going to talk about this. So look at this graph. Suppose currently the good X is sold at the unit price of 10, and then at this unit price 30 units were purchased, and then for some reason, even at the same price, okay, so here go back to this definition, at any given price there is a change that increase the quantity that buyers wish to buy, a change that causes buyers to buy more at any given price. So here, $10, this is a given price. So given price, at the same price, for some reason, previously, quantity demanded associated with this price was previously what, 30 units. But all of a sudden, for some reason, even at the same price, new quantity demanded, the quantity people want to buy increased to 80 units. So price did not change at any given price, same price, just the people buy more. Same price, but the quantity demanded increased. Whenever it happens, we say there is what? A rightward shift in demand, or simply we say an increase in demand. Okay. Now, look at this graph. Well, initially the price is 10, and previously quantity demanded at this price was 80 units. And something happened, and all of a sudden, even at the same price, now people buy a lot less than before. So quantity demanded decreased from 80 to 30, even at the same price. So price is not the cause of the change here, something else. For something else, some other reason, even at the same price, people buy less than before. If that happens, we say what? There is a decrease in demand or a leftward shift, okay? So this means what? A decrease in demand. Again, here, even at the same price, for some reason, people buy more of a good than before. So price is not the cause of this change, something else. And on the bottom, same price, but now people buy a lot less than before. Again, price is not the cause because it's the same price, but something else caused this. Okay, so leftward shift in demand curve means what? Same price, but people buy less than before. Okay, and that is what we call a decrease in demand here. Same price, but people buy more than before. So there is what? A rightward shift in demand or an increase in demand. Okay. So then what makes a demand curve shift to the right or to the left? Or what causes the demand for the good to increase or decrease? Or what are the factors that cause a demand curve to shift either to the right or to the left? Okay, that's what we're going to discuss. Okay. All right. So again, always keep this in mind. When demand curve is shifting to the right or to the left, so that means even at the same price, people all of a sudden, for whatever reason, buy more or less of a good. So when they buy more, then what? There is a shift, rightward shift, and we call that increase in demand. When even at the same price, when they buy less than before, we say this is a decrease in demand and a leftward shift. Okay, so we all know here in both figures, price remains the same at the $10. So there's no change in price. So price is not the cause of what? Price is not a cause of any shift in demand curve. Okay, price is not a cause. Something else is causing demand curve to shift to the right or to the left. So that's exactly what we are talking about. So what are those factors that cause a demand curve to shift? First one is income. Well, use your common sense. Here, same price, yet people decided to buy more. Well, when consumers' income increases, it's possible. Hey, why do you buy more of this? Is the product that got did the product get any cheaper? You say no, it's the same price. Then how come you buy more of this? And you can say, well, it didn't get any cheaper, but I have a greater income. I got pay raise. I have more income, so I can afford to buy more. So typically what? When income increases, then what? Even at the same price of the good, people tend to buy more of the good. Okay. So income is what? Certainly a factor that causes the demand curve to shift. Well, what if people buy less of a good? Hey, why do you buy less of this? Did the price of the good increase? You may say, no, no, price is the same. But the reason that I consume less of this good is because, hey, I have lost my job. So I cannot afford to consume as many units of the good as I used to. So certainly a change in income is what? A factor that causes demand curve to shift. So here we're going to learn a couple of new terms. Normal goods and inferior goods. Okay. Normal goods mean that goods are more let me put it back up this way. Okay. Eraser. Okay, go back. So more units of a good are consumed as consumer income increases. So that means also when income goes down, then what? Fewer units will be consumed. So income and the quantity demanded are moving in the same direction. Then we say they are normal goods. Most of the goods we buy in the marketplace are normal goods. Now, inferior goods, this is quite rare, but that means fewer units of a good are consumed as consumer income increases. So as you have a more financial means, then what? Actually, you reduce the consumption of a certain good. If that's the case, then what we call such goods what? Inferior goods. Okay. So now, in terms of a graph, for normal goods, let's say price and quantity demanded. So initially demand curve is here. Now, as income rises, as income increases, okay, as income increases, what happens? New demand curve will be what? Appear to the right of the initial demand curve, because at any given price, then what? You buy more than before. As income increases, you increase the purchase, the what? Of a certain good, then it is a normal good. But if it is an inferior good, then what? It's a different story. So here, price and quantity, here's your initial demand curve. But as your income increases, then what? You reduce the purchase of such a good. So at any price, then what? You used to buy this many goods, but as your income increases, then what? You buy less of the good. So demand curve appears what? New demand curve appears to the left of what? The initial demand curve. Okay, because you buy less. Even at the same price, you consume less of the good. Why? Because your income increases. So this is what? Inferior good. And this is what? Normal good when income changes. Okay. Now, prices of related good. Again, here we're going to learn two terms. Substitutes and complements. Substitutes means what? Two goods are in competition. You don't consume two goods together because you only need one of them. So when one good can be used in place of what? Another, then we call those two goods what? Substitutes. Okay. For example, why would you drink a Pepsi and Coke together? Either you drink a Pepsi or Coke. So Pepsi and Coke are in competition. The substitutes. Okay. Can you find some other examples of a substitutes good? Well, you may say hot dogs and hamburgers. Well, even though you can consume them technically together, but we say probably what? They are in competition. Okay. And cinema tickets and the online movie streaming services, now they are certainly in competition. Okay. So now technical definition of substitutes here is what? So I said, I mean, two goods in competition, or when one good can be used in place of another, we say those two goods are substitutes. But here's a technical definition. When a fall in the price of one good reduces the demand for another good, two goods are called substitutes. That means here. For example, let's say we can say Ford F-150 and Chevy Silverado, two of the most popular trucks. So let's say, you know, Ford F-150 and Chevy Silverado are in competition. One can be used in place of the other, so substitutes. But technical definition here is what? When a fall in the price of one good, let's say price of F-150 falls, then what will happen? As a Ford F-150 becomes cheaper, so some people will switch from Chevy Silverado to F-150. So as the F-150 price goes down, then what? More F-150 purchased. And there's just some people, well, there could be some loyal, die-hard Chevy drivers, but in general, if Ford F-150 price goes down, then what? Fewer Silverado will be purchased. So see here, as if the price of one good, in this context, price of what? F-150, okay, falls, reduces, okay, then what? It leads to a decrease in demand for another good. People buy fewer Silverado. So the quantity demanded of Silverado is what? Going down. Okay. Or you can say this way. If for some reason, if a Ford F-150 becomes more expensive, then what? Again, then people switch away, substitute away from Ford F-150, and then what? More people will buy the Silverado, so quantity demanded of a Silverado will increase. Okay. So if this technical definition is satisfied, then what? We say the two goods are substitutes. Now, complements are what? Now, two goods are not competing against each other. Actually, two goods are consumed together often. So that means two goods are consumed together. That's why they are complements. Okay. So two goods are consumed together. For example, gasoline and the SUVs. Okay. Or the PC tablet or cell phones and the so-called e-books. So now here's a technical definition. When the price of one good is falling, then the amount of the other good people buy, the demand for another good is now what? Increasing. Then we say the two goods are complements. So here, for example, gasoline price is falling. Price of gas is falling. So what happens? Well, gasoline price is falling, then what? Gas guzzlers like SUVs. Well, its maintenance cost is now cheaper. So more SUV are sold or purchased, right? So as the price of one good goes down, it leads to what? An increase in what? Demand for another. Or here, let's say PC tablet prices are going down. Okay. So as it gets cheaper, then what? More of what? Such devices will be owned. More people will own such device. Then what? Chances are they're gonna what? More people will start reading ebooks. So demand for ebooks increases. Not necessarily because ebook got any cheaper, even if ebook price remains the same, but as more people own tablets, then what? The demand for ebooks will increase. So that's a complement. So a lot of students find these two concepts, technical definitions of a substitute and the technical definition of a complements. But now if you read the definition very carefully, then it's not that bad. Now, another reason, so let me back up here a little bit before we discuss the remaining portion. So let me use the graph, okay? So here, for example, substitute. I wish we had a little extra space, but here. So here. So price of a Silverado, quantity demanded of a Silverado. Okay, so demand for Silverado is here. Now this is what? This is before F-150 price falls. Okay. And now, so this is what? Before F-150 price changes. And then now once F-150 price is falling, then now what? People buy the less of Silverado. So then what? So let's say Silverado price was previously what? Let's say $30,000. I know it's more than $30,000. So even though Silverado price is the same, but now what? What's going to happen? Once the Ford F-150 price goes down, then what happens? Then people buy less than before. So same price, about what? People buy less of what? The fewer the Chevy Silverado. So that means what? Demand curve is what? Shifting to the right, to the left. So they a fall in the price of one good. F-150 price is falling. That led to what? the number of Silverado purchased the what the decrease in the number of what Silverado purchased. So that is what as a Ford F-150 price falls, then what demand for Silverado decreases. Okay, and here let me use another example here for complements. Okay, so here think about this. So price of SUV and the number of SUVs people buy. So let's say initially demand was here. This is what before gas price falls. But after gas price falls, then what? People now find SUVs more attractive because maintenance cost is lower. So now what? Say SUV price was over here, let's say 40,000, whatever. But even at the same price, there was no change in price. But what? As the gas price goes down, people buy more of SUVs. Okay, so this new demand is what? After gas price falls. Okay, so certainly demand curve of SUV shifted. Demand curve of SUV shifted to the right. Okay, now consumer taste preference. Well, sometimes what even product price does not change. Still, people may buy more or less of a good as their taste preference changes. So think of what some an example of what a passing fad. Okay, well, fashion style keeps changing. Okay, and then when one particular style becomes more and more popular, then what? Even though price didn't change, but simply it becomes a fad, so people buy more of it. So demand curve. So say here price and quantity demanded, and demand curve was here, a certain price here, but it's like what the like a bandwagon. Everybody jumps on it, and it becomes more popular. So everybody is what trying to buy more of it. When there's just such a passing fad, then what? Even at the same price didn't change, but what? People buy more of something, so what? Demand will shift to the right. But of course, such passing fad dies, then what? Demand curve will shift back to the left. Okay. Now, another factor that causes demand curve to shift: expectations about future price or income, etc. So what happens? So when you expect the future price to be higher, you tend to buy more today before the price rises, right? Why? Because when you expect the future price to be higher, so that means the longer you wait, the chances that you're going to have to pay higher price for a good are increasing. So that's why whenever people form such expectations, then what? All of a sudden, they want to buy more today. So let me use demand curve again here, price and quantity demanded. So here, demand curve. So this is before you form such expectation. Okay, so price is what? Let's say $2, and people consume 1,000 gallons of what? Gasoline, for example. Now a hurricane is brewing, and so people form such expectation. Oh, it'll be harder to get gas, or price will go up. So what? Now all of a sudden people want to buy more gas today. So that means what? Do they buy more gasoline because its price went down? No. Even at the same price, but what? As they form such expectation, then what? Even at the same price, they want to buy more gasoline today. So let's say 2,000 gallons a day. So this is what? Demand curve after they form such expectation. So future expectation does cause demand curve of something to shift, okay? Or income as well. So if people expect if people are concerned about their job security, then what? Even though their current income this month is exactly the same, but as they are more and more concerned, increasingly concerned about their job security, so what? They may reduce the purchase of something, even though the product price did not change. Okay. So finally, the number of buyers. Well, number of buyers. If a market size is growing as more and more people join the market, then even at the same price, as more people are in the marketplace, so what? The quantity demanded of a good will also increase. Okay. So for example, in Hammond, think of demand curve of price and quantity. Demand curve for like what? Just food, fast food. Okay, so demand curve. So let's say this is before Katrina. Okay, same price here. But even at the same price, then what? After Hurricane Katrina, simply more people moved up north. As more people moved north shore, then what? Whatever it is, at any given price, more will be purchased than before. So demand curve increases, shifts to the right. Demand increases. So this is what? After the Hurricane Katrina. Okay. So that's what happened in Hammond. Of course, down there, like in place like a Chalmette, actually right after Hurricane Katrina, the reverse happened. As more people moved out of the town, moved out permanently sometimes, then what? Demand decreased and demand curve shifted to the left. Okay, so this will conclude our discussion of the buyer's side of the market, demand, and we will continue to discuss now seller's side of market in part 2 lecture of chapter 4. Thank you so much.